Hello, fellow bookish people. I'm doing my check-in for March of the Mammoth, which is a readathon hosted by Jason over at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, Lukas at Totally Pretentious, and Alex at Big Al's Books, which is sort of just a read an 800 plus page book in the month of March. And I am reading Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset, and this is my second check-in. The book is indeed, it's divided into three. It was originally published as three books: the Wreath, which I talked about my last check-in, the Wife, which I'm going to talk about this one, and the Cross, which will be hopefully my final check-in. Oh, as the wind picks up here, I'll grab onto my notes and put the book down. So yes, it was published as three separate books, but so far this is very much the Wife section that is continuing on from the Wreath. The Wreath, which was a sort of Kristin Lavransdatter making what could be arguably a rather disastrous decision to take up with a fellow named Erland. Well, his last name escapes me at the moment, and marry him instead of marrying the fellow that her father Lavrand had actually intended for her to marry, Simon. Take up with him, and the rather tragic, bloody results of this that ends indeed at the end of this. Kristin Lavransdatter ends up as the wife of Erland, and that's how the Wife the Wife starts. It continues. So this is very much a good book. This is very much one book on its own. I can see someone reading each section, putting down a section and coming back to it a while later. I have a terrible memory, so I am finding that I'm really benefiting from just gulping down all three sections at once, getting kind of the echoes from the sections, because indeed, as we go along in this book, and as Kristin and Erland go through their marriage together, this goes through a good section where they go through. Kristin, in the course of this book, gives birth to seven, maybe even number 8 children. I'm losing track of children, but each one of these is a death-defying event in this novel, which is set. If you haven't seen my first video, which is set in 14th century Norway, amongst Kristin, who is very much a pious Christian woman. And as I said in the last book, this last review, this is a book that is really good at dropping you into her point of view as a very pious woman. And I mean, she is probably more pious than a lot of other people in this book. As in any society, there are some people who sort of take lip service for it, and they go through the motions, but they're okay. And there's other people that this is a deep spiritual practice, and Kristin is very much one of these people. And indeed, the start of this book, which is called The Fruit of the Sin, is very much about Kristin's guilt and anguish and genuine concern about what's going to happen to her and her unborn child at the start of this book. Will her sins being visited upon her children? Will the birth go okay? Will the child survive? Will the child be born wrong? All these worries, and which I think would be very valid in a time when I'm sure the infant mortality rate was just horrendous. And indeed, some parts of this first section I saw, it was like, wow, this is kind of heavy going, because she is so consumed with guilt, and you can feel that in the people around her as well, sort of almost wanting her to ease off and her not able to. And indeed, it's never a great strength of this being kind of a saga of being this being her life, is like that never really goes away. It slowly eases as we go along. And there's like a moment of a vision, which is quite beautiful, which is yet another callback to a beautiful character, Brother Edvin, in the first book. It eases her a bit, but it's still always there. And indeed, it works on the marriages where someone like Erland, the man that she has married, is a very reckless guy, a very sort of in a lot of ways a thoughtless guy, or a guy of action, but is not a guy who's liable to kind of dwell over stuff that happened in the past. Like, that happened in the past. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. We did what we had to do. Kind of that kind of an attitude of a guy versus someone like Kristin, who feels a lot of guilt for contributing, egging on the death of another human being, another woman that Erland kind of, whether he was sucked into her vortex or basically through his carelessness and the woman's, there's just a lot of stuff. And within this, but within this world, the good thing with this novel is that though it's called Kristin Lavransdatter, it's about all of her family. It's about Simon. It's about her father Lavran. It's about her mother Ragnfrid. There's like this book stops and gives almost all of these characters a moment of their own, a moment of if it was an actor, this would be like, this is their moment to shine and to truly dive deeply into all of these people's lives in such a way that is so impressive. This isn't we're just taking Team Kristin. It's like, no, you delve deeply into even someone like Erland and kind of understand why is he's like actually an appealing guy in a lot of ways, as well as being deeply reckless and being someone that fathers would not want their daughters to take up with. And speaking of fathers, you have someone like Lavrand, who's Kristin's father, who is in his own way is he's like a noble character, but he's also someone you wonder, how much is he responsible for his daughter's bad decisions in life, because perhaps he loved her too much love, and his own conflicts over, he could have been sort of a great warrior guy, but he could have also been kind of more of someone who chose like a monkish life, but he's made his own decisions in life, and it makes for an extremely rich and beautiful book. The writing in this book is tremendous. The way as I said, the way you get kind of plunged into people's lives. There's a thing of like, I am never going to have children. That's something that I've decided in my life. But this is a book where you get into kind of Kristin's head so deeply. It's like, oh, I can see it. I can kind of feel it. It's a book that almost makes me want to have children, which is a silly way. It's just saying, like, I identify with the character. I don't actually want to have children. But something like her saying, is Kristin thinking about her children, and their lives would be like a current in her own life. They would be one with her, just as they had been when she was alone on this earth, knew about the new life hidden inside, drinking her blood and making her cheeks pale. Over and over she had endured the sinking, sweat-dripped anguish when she'd realized that once again her time had come. Once again she would be pulled under by the groundswell of birth pains, until she was lifted up with a new child in her arms. How much richer and stronger and braver she had become with each child was something that she first realized tonight. And it's like, I hope that gives a kind of a sense of kind of just the beauty of the language, but also just how it pulls you into Kristin's motherhood in a way that, A, as a guy, but also A, as somebody who's childless. I have my fur babies, but that's it. And I will just read you one more section here, just to leave you off, of Lavran's talking to his daughter about, him saying, becoming, at one point he had thought about becoming kind of a monk when he was like 16, of like kind of rejecting the worldly world, something that Kristin herself kind of thinks about as a way to try to escape her responsibilities, but ultimately that does not happen. But this is what Lavran says to her. I chose this world myself, and whenever things went against me, I tried to tell myself that it would be unmanly to complain about the fate I had chosen. For I've realized more and more with each year that I've lived, there's no worthier work for a person who has been graced with the ability to see even a small part of God's mercy than to serve Him and to keep vigil and to pray for those people whose sight is still clouded by the shadow of worldly matters. And yet I must tell you, my Kristin, that it would be hard for me to sacrifice, for the sake of God, that life which I have lived on my estates, with its care of temporal things, and its worldly joys, with your mother at my side, and all of you children. So a man must learn to accept, when he produces offspring from his own body, that his heart will burn if he loses them, or if the world goes against them. God, who gave them souls, is the one who owns them, not I. Sobs shook Kristin's body. Her father began rocking her in his arms as if she were a small child. And I don't know. Yeah, it's a stunning book on the portrayal of parenthood, on the difficult pain and sorrow that can come from a husband and a wife, both Lavrans and Ragnfrid, and also Kristin and Erlend. And indeed, this is a book where you go through kind of the nastiest parts of their marriage, but you also come to sort of, at the end of this section, they almost come back to that initial passion again, because things have gone so horribly wrong. Yeah, it's a beautiful, immersive book, and it's a joy to be doing this in March. So that is my update on Marching Mammoths, and I will march along and let you know how I feel about the third section, the cross, later, before the end of the month, hopefully. Bye for now. More videos later.